One of the first critters that I met in Linda's lab was this ambly pigeon. And I said, a what? I had never seen anything like that before. And Linda, she does amazing spider outreach, and there's a link to her wonderful spider information in the back of the book. But she was saying, okay, well, do you want to hold it? And those of you who know me know I'm really not squeamish, but even I was sort of like, why don't you hold it? Because I'm holding the camera, and I can't really do both things, so that's okay. But I got introduced to that guy, and then this beautiful orange-kneed tarantula sitting on its comfy pad of silk, and then these social spiders. And, I really was such a neophyte in the spider world that I learned right then and there that spiders usually eat each other. They don't get along well. They don't play well with others. So it's very unusual for them to solve any problems of spider living communally. And I logged that away because that's the kind of cool science story I'm always looking for. And I thought, well, let's have a look at these arachnids. An ambly pigeon is an arachnid. These guys are arachnids. Let's see what that's all about. And so I did my sort of big, wide dive into a subject, which is what I normally do. And I started with this arachnids book, and I read about spiders. But I also found out that things like scorpions and mites are also arachnids. And then these things like ambly pigeons and other things that Cole Gilbert calls the weirdos, one of my favorite scientific terms, things like sun spiders and whip scorpions and other stuff that I had never heard of. And when I worked on amphibian acrobats, I kept looking at all of these books that lumped amphibians and reptiles together. And even that I wasn't willing to do because they solve the problems of their daily living in really, really different ways. And I thought, there's too many arachnids doing too many different things. So I'm just going to concentrate on spiders. I'll just do spiders. So the next thing that I found out is that there are 50,000 different spider species. That's a lot of spiders, and they all solve these problems of spider daily living in many, many different ways with their 8 legs and 8 or 6 or some other number eyes and 2 palps and 2 body parts, and whether they build webs or don't build webs, or whether they get their food in the day or the night, or all the different habitats they live in and how the different ways they use silk and how they find mates. All of these different tricks of the spider trade, and on and on and on. And then I sat down and did some of my science poetry math. Got to get the math in here too. So amphibian acrobats, there were about 8,000 species of amphibians, 20 poems in this book. Superlative birds, 9,000 species of birds. And then all of a sudden people were talking about there might be 18,000 species of birds because taxonomists argue about these things and I stay out of it. Taxonomy is the bane of my science poetry existence, but still 20 poems. 50,000 species of spiders, and I think I'm going to need a bigger book. So how am I going to get all of these spiders and all the things they're doing into a bigger book of spider poetry? I know, short poems. Lots of short poems. That'll, make things much easier. So the first thing was, as Robert and I both feel, very, very, very lucky to have amazing support from Peachtree, the wonderful, beautiful art direction from Adela Pons, and our wonderful editor, Vicki Holyfield. And they made the trim size of the book bigger. The layout is beautiful. All these things fit on this page so nicely. So, less was more, but it also turned out to be way more work. So many spider species, so many things they're doing, so much more work for me, so much more work for Robert, right, Robert?
Yes.
A lot more work. You know, Robert and I, this is our fourth book together. I think of Robert mostly as a mind reader because I think of these problems with something I've done and he's already solved them before I've even said anything. And he also asks great questions. So I thought I'd head him off this time with some of the great questions since it's our fourth book that I could anticipate. And I made this big, complicated chart of all of the species and what kind of web they had and how many eyes they had and their relative sizes, which we got started with a lot of cool back matter when wonderful librarian Terry Young suggested that we put a relative size chart in leaf litter critters. And so we've tried to include something like that in every book. And spiders, it was just really hard to do it. It was kind of like coming up with this sort of range and then arbitrarily picking the middle of the range. And I put all of these spiders in their size ranges and everything. But even that wasn't really, you know, quite enough. So, for example, you know, you look at a spider like this super cute jumping spider. I mean, everybody's got to think this spider is cute, right? Look at those cute eyes. So one of the things about working with Robert is that he, you know, he has these I call them signature Meganck googly eyes. Like all of the critters have these great googly eyes. So which eyes on the spider do you make googly eyes? Well, on the jumping spider, it's not that hard to figure out. On this cellar spider, it's not that hard to figure out. But then, you know, looking at the other spiders, I think you guys can see this, right? Can you see this chart I'm holding up?
Yeah.
In the little box. So this is just a tiny portion of charts that you can look at to figure out how many eyes in the eye arrangements so all of these spiders. It was really, really hard. So every time, you know, we came up with this, I had to sort of go back and look. I couldn't keep it all in my head. I had to go back and look things up over and over and over again.